Deep in the Swedish forests there are 26 stones that shouldn't exist. They aren't grave markers. They're crime scenes. Most runestones brag about raids in England. They talk about gold and glory. These stones are different. They speak of a place called Serkland, the land of the Saracens, the Middle East. In 1036, a fleet of 3,000 Swedish elite warriors went east and vanished. They went hunting for Arab silver and sailed right off the edge of the map. We know the Vikings conquered England, but have you heard of the army that tried to conquer the Middle East and found a hell they weren't ready for? This is the Ingvar Expedition, the disaster that wiped out a generation and left nothing but stones in the snow. 1036 AD, the Viking Age is ending. In the West, kings are turning Christian. The easy raids are gone. But in Sweden, the old gods are still hungry. Meet Ingvar. They call him the Far-Travelled. In reality, he was Ingvar the Broke. Royal blood, cousin to kings, but no land and no throne. In the Viking world, a prince without silver is a nobody. Ingvar didn't want scraps from England. He wanted the main vein. He knew the stories. Swedish Rus traders had been drifting down Russian rivers for decades. They brought back dirhams, high-grade Arab silver. Ingvar saw the map. He saw the Silk Road. He decided to cut out the middleman. He sent out the call. He wanted killers. The response was massive. 3,000 men, 30 warships, the Housecarls, the sons of chieftains, the best armed men in the north. They loaded the ships with axes, shields, and empty chests. They rowed out into the Baltic thinking about silver. They had no idea they were sailing into a slaughterhouse. History books say they traveled the Russian rivers. That's a lie. They suffered. To reach the east, Ingvar's army fought physics. They hit the Volga river system. At first, the current helped. They coasted past Kiev. Then, the rivers turned against them. The water dropped. Rapids appeared. The ships grounded. This is the portage. 3,000 men jumped into the mud. They cut down forests to make log rollers. They tied ropes around their waists and dragged 30-ton oak warships over the earth. Miles of dragging, through swamps, through clouds of mosquitoes that turned the air black. Men broke legs. Men died of exhaustion. If you fell, the ship didn't stop. Ingvar drove them like cattle. He told them the pain was the price of the silver. Finally, the river opened up. The smell changed. Pine sap was replaced by salt and sand. They hit the Caspian Sea. They were further east than almost any Viking army in history. They were hardened. They were exhausted. And they were walking into a trap. They landed in the Caucasus, modern-day Georgia. It felt like a different planet. The heat was suffocating. The sun was blinding. These men were wearing wool, padding, and heavy chainmail. They were built for ice, not ovens. They rowed up the Rioni River looking for a city to sack. Instead, they found a war. The kingdom of Georgia was burning. King Bagrat was fighting for his life against a rebel warlord named Liparit. Bagrat saw the fleet. He saw 3,000 giants with axes. He didn't fight them. He hired them. The deal was struck. Kill my enemies, take their silver. It looked easy. The Vikings were used to terrifying French peasants. They looked at the Georgian rebels and saw soft targets. They thought their reputation would win the fight. They were wrong. The Georgians had been fighting empires for centuries. They weren't peasants. They were professionals. 1042. The Battle of Sasireti. Ingvar's Vikings took the center. They formed the Skjaldborg, the shield wall, a fortress of wood and iron. They banged their axes, they chanted. They waited for the collision. The enemy refused to play. The rebel commander, Liparit, saw the heavy infantry. He saw they were slow. He saw they were cooking in their armor. He sent in the cavalry. But they didn't charge. They stopped 50 yards out and unleashed hell. Thousands of arrows hammered the Viking line. Some punched through mail, others found gaps. The Vikings screamed, daring them to fight close. The horsemen just laughed, reloaded, and fired again. It was death by inches. The Vikings were trapped. The heat stroke set in. Men were passing out behind their shields. The wall was crumbling. Then came the fire. The chronicles say the enemy used burning oil, Greek fire. Pots of liquid fire smashed into the tight formation. Panic broke the line. You can't hold a shield wall when you're burning alive. The formation shattered. The Georgian heavy cavalry lowered their lances and charged. They hit the disorganized Vikings like a hammer hitting glass. The elite of Sweden were trampled into the sand. Ingvar rallied the survivors. They hacked their way out. They retreated to the ships, beaten and unpaid. They thought they had survived. They were wrong. The South had one weapon left. In the filthy river camps, sickness hit. The sagas call it a plague. We call it dysentery. It moves fast. Cramps, fever, liquid death. These men could take an axe to the face and keep fighting, but they couldn't fight this. Within days, the camp was a graveyard. Warriors died in their own filth, too weak to hold a sword. There was no Valhalla here, just flies and the smell of rot. Ingvar the prince, the man who promised them the world, died vomiting in the dirt. He was 25, 30 ships left. Legend says one came back. Imagine that single ship limping into the Swedish harbor. Tattered sails, bleached wood, a crew of ghosts. They didn't bring silver. They brought silence. The grief broke the nation. An entire generation of men gone. The families did the only thing left. They raised stones. The Gripsholm stone stands there today. The runes are painted blood red. The text is brutal. They traveled manfully far for gold, and in the east gave food to the eagle. They died in the south in Serkland. Serkland, the land of death. That stone ended the Swedish Viking Age. The dream of an Eastern empire died with Ingvar. Ingvar proved the Vikings weren't invincible. They were men. They got greedy, they gambled, and they lost. But there was a group of Vikings who did master the East. They didn't try to conquer the emperors. They protected them. If you want to see the Vikings who actually got the gold and the glory, watch this video on the Varangian Guard. It's the success story Ingvar died trying to live. Click here. See you in Constantinople.